Alanis and welcome back to Art with Alanis. This week I'm going to show you how to use watercolor. For this you've received watercolor, cardstock paper, and these awesome leaves that you can watercolor or you can just color on to the drawing station. Before you get started, it's awesome to have a cup of water so you can rinse off your brush and some paper towels to wipe off your brush when you're done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide up my paper. To do this, I'm going to take some masking tape and I'm going to divide it into 4 different sections so I could show you 2 different techniques and some really cool tips. Alright, now that we've got our paper sectioned out, I'm going to show you the first technique. The first technique is called wet on wet. So what this means is that you're going to have a wet paper and your paint is also going to be wet. So first, before I wet my paper, I'm going to go ahead and wet my paint. And if your watercolor does have a lid, what you could do with your wet paint is you can spot it onto the lid of your watercolor and use that as well. Alright, once you have your paint wet, you're going to rinse off your brush so there's no more paint on it. After that, you're going to dip your brush in there one more time. You're going to put water onto the paper. Make sure not to put too much water because it will crumple up the paper and we don't want to do that. And if your water dries up before you put on the paint, then just add water to the area that you need to paint on. Alright, so I got my paper wet. Now I'm going to put my paint on there. Now it's going to look a little bit lighter than the actual paint, but to make it darker, you add on more paint. What's also really cool about watercolor is that you can take different colors and you can blend them together and it'll blend really nice too. So I'm going to go ahead and wet some red. Blend it in there. Mix the red with the blue to make purple. You could do that if you don't have a certain color on your watercolor palette. You can mix colors to make another color. Just like we discussed when we did the color wheel video. Before we move on to the next technique, what's also really awesome to do is kind of draw out with a pencil what you're going to paint. So I'm going to draw some mountains over here just by using my gesture method. Just simply place it on there. Not too dark, not too light, just where I'm able to see it. Alright, the next technique is wet on dry. What that technique is you're going to place wet paint onto your dry paper. So I'm going to go ahead and wet my brown over here, and I'm going to place it where my mountain is going to be. Now if you have too much, when you place your paint down and it's too watery, another really cool trick you could do is you could take your paper towel, dry your brush up a little bit, and you can absorb that water with the brush. And also it'll blend out the color as well to make it look lighter. And that is the wet on dry technique. Another really cool thing about watercolor, what you could do is once your paint is dry and you want to make something look darker, well, you could take a colored pencil and you can shade onto it. I'm actually going to draw some mountains in here using my brown colored pencil. Now if you want to use crayons when you're using watercolor, it's important to remember that watercolor does not absorb with the crayon because crayons are waxy, and wax and water don't mix. I'm going to show you. Which kind of works out in your favor because let's say I want to draw a circle and I want to keep my paint inside the circle. Kind of gives you more of a barrier, and it kind of helps you out a little bit to not get paint outside of where you want it to go. Remember, when you're using watercolor, make sure to not put too much water onto your paper or it will cripple. Painting with watercolor can be difficult to do when you first do it, but just remember to be patient with yourself. Also, the leaves that we've sent you guys, please give it back to us because we'd like to hang it up around the clubhouse. Until next time, stay creative.